I had an interesting evening, a very good evening over at DePauw University. The students began classes again on Wednesday, and Friday, the first Friday of the school year every year, DePauw puts on an activities fair where the entire gym is full of booths of every organization on campus. All the different offerings for students, the rock climbing club and the fraternities and the sororities and the different faith groups also have a booth. And so I was there for my third activities fair now as the chaplain, the Catholic chaplain to DePauw students. And it was, first of all, it was very exciting for me. I was thinking back to my first one when I had just begun. There was no preparation for being a college chaplain. It was just sort of a letter from the Archbishop, you are the chaplain at DePauw. There was no training or anything like that. So my first activities fair, I sort of stood behind the table, kind of afraid a little bit, intimidated by, I'm not sure how to be a college chaplain. And so I kind of stood back behind and just kind of took it all in and kind of waited for someone to approach us. And kind of took a passive approach, because again, I didn't really know what I was doing anyways. And as I dove in then to college ministry, though, I became aware some statistics were given to me that kind of lit a fire underneath me in regards to that ministry. First of all, the studies show that what college students do in their first 2 weeks, the patterns that college freshmen develop in the first 2 weeks of their time at college are, for the overwhelming majority, those become the pattern of life that they live for the entire 4 years. And the other statistic is that 75% of Catholic students stop practicing their faith in college. So my first activities fair was very passive. I learned that. I've now taken a much different approach. And it was awesome also to see we had students and missionaries who were there with us on this past Friday. We had t-shirts, magnets, a far cry from my little clipboard that I had the first year waiting for students to walk by and introduce themselves. I was actually out introducing myself and asking students, are you Catholic? And some of them were like, no. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Well, you're welcome to DePauw anyways. But I was just asking every student that walked by. And so, again, it was a good reminder and a good, there's been progress. That was the first takeaway from that. But another piece of what was taking place on Friday night is at the activities fair there was a DJ, and there were speakers, because you have to make it seem fun, to the college freshmen and a good atmosphere and so forth. And so the DJ was there, and the music was deafening. I realized I'm getting old, because I wanted to be the guy to go up and be like, could you turn it down? Just a little bit. It was literally shaking my body. It's like the speakers are 30 feet away, and you're trying to, which is kind of a strange thing, because everybody's trying to have conversations, and no one can hear each other. So it was kind of defeating the purpose a little bit. It's like, are you Catholic? And they're like, what? Anyways, the reason I'm getting to the point, and that is that as standing there, sometimes when there was a lull in the crowd or there's no students walking by, I was kind of listening to the lyrics, and there was all the music of the day, and all the popular music from the radio and so forth that young people are listening to. And I was listening to the philosophy. I always listen to lyrics as I'm listening to songs, and listening to the lyrics of what was being proposed to these freshmen. In fact, there were some songs that were actually geared towards college students and particularly freshmen. But it was all the music was sort of proposing a way to live to our young people. And I don't need to read the lyrics to you. In fact, I would probably be reprimanded by the Archbishop if I read the lyrics to you in a house of God. But it was proposing, I don't need to read them to you to let you know that they are proposing a way of life which basically says, indulge yourself. Don't restrain yourself. Be free. And every you can only be free when you live the way that you want to live and act on every instinct and every impulse that you have in the moment. Do it. It'll be great. You'll love it. You'll be happy. And as I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm seeing all the students, when particular songs would come on, run over there and dance to it or get excited by it, and it's very loud and catchy and so forth, and literally deafening. And I'm sitting there kind of contrasting that with, I'm like, here I am, I'm a 37-year-old priest dressed in boring clothing. What am I proposing to these students? And I was thinking about the fact that it's literally it is the complete opposite. And it was just this weird for me contrast that 30 feet apart, you have these two completely different proposals to these students about how to live. And it was making me, though, and at the same time, because I have to go through this, like most of us, we have to ask this question quite frequently. What does it mean to be Catholic? What is it that I am proposing? I was asking myself that question, kind of just evaluating, okay, we have a very clear presentation over here. What am I offering? What does it mean to be Catholic? What is this proposal that I'm making? Because again, it's like looking at it from afar, it's like almost like absurd in the sense that it looks like we have no advantage. We are completely outnumbered, completely overwhelmed by the other proposal. I can't even speak loud enough to get my proposal, the proposal of the church, across to these young people. And out of the 2,400 students at DePauw, we got 42 names, and that's great. But that's terrible percentage, right? So what am I? So I'm asking myself, what am I proposing? What am I offering? What are we offering? And again, it's a good thing for us to consider that. What is it that we are proposing? And I have to ask myself and walk myself through that quite frequently. And I think we all do, right? Just a re-examination. What does it mean to be Catholic? Why am I doing this? And it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good process for us to go through. And some people, I think the vast majority of people probably in our world today, certainly among young people, hear the proposal and understand the proposal of Catholicism to be rules, regulations, an angry God, and very much the God that is described in the letter to the Hebrews today as the false God, the God that is not a part of our faith. We hear it in the letter to the Hebrews from St. Paul. You have not approached a blazing fire, gloomy darkness, a storm. You've not approached this God that is imposing on you from the outside. And I don't care how Catholic you are, we are all sometimes tempted to see God that way. A God who imposes things on us from outside with force, with violence, with fear. And so if we struggle with that, imagine how much the person who's never really lived the faith struggles and believes that that is what we're offering. It's a hard sell because no one wants that. They're like, I've got 9 classes, I've got all these other things, and you want me to add more onto that, which involves dealing with some God who is angry and has more rules, more meetings, more things for me to do. That doesn't appeal to people. But again, we struggle with that. So again, if we struggle, how much more those who've never lived the faith? We have to understand that and remind ourselves that, because if we don't understand it properly, how could we ever invite someone else to it? But again, what I did, as I do most days, walking myself through what is it that I believe, what am I offering to these students in proposing Catholicism, It was the same process that St. Paul says to the Hebrews. This is not the God that you are approaching. He says, you have approached Mount Zion, heaven, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and countless angels in festal gathering, and the assembly of the firstborn enrolled in heaven, the spirits of the just made perfect, and Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the sprinkled blood that speaks more eloquently than that of Abel. That is a beautiful outline and laying forth of what it is that we are doing, what it is that it means to be Catholic. You have not approached a God of fear, thunder, and lightning. That was the God of the Old Covenant, because in their blindness and their weakness and their inability to live in God, that was all they could see in God. And that was the only way that they could relate. But now what is being offered in Jesus is the ability to live already now with one foot in heaven. That particularly at the Mass, we have the ability to live already in the midst of heaven, even while we're still here on this earth, while we can't see everything completely clearly. And that is what we are offering to the world. And then when we realize that that's what we're offering, that makes it much easier to go to others and say, come with me. I've got something that I would like to present to you, and I believe that this will change your life. And it was that reminder then that allowed me to not concern myself with how other people thought of me, to overcome the awkwardness that goes with approaching people, and to just throw myself at it and just start asking everybody, are you Catholic? Can we help you? We need to be constantly reminded of that. We need to walk ourselves through that reminder of who God is and what the faith is proposing to us and the way of life that's being proposed to us. And the ultimate key to this, I think, is what we hear about in the first reading in the gospel, which is the virtue of humility. Humility, not in the sense of like looking down at the floor and just, hating yourself. That's the God of fear. But what humility in this sense? Humility in the sense of being able to ask myself a particularly important question. Am I at peace? Am I at peace? Is the way of life that I'm living out of, the way that I operate my life each day, is it working? That takes humility. Because in our pride, we want to say, you know what, I'm already doing it all right. I've got it all figured out. I am okay. I am happy. I am at peace. Or at least this is the best that it's going to get. Whereas humility allows me to ask myself the question and be open to the idea that maybe I'm doing some of this wrong. Maybe I haven't quite figured it all out. Maybe I'm not seeing God most authentically. Maybe I have room to grow. Jesus always says when he shows up to places, peace be with you. Because I think that is what Jesus is proposing. Peace, happiness, a way of life that allows us to already begin to experience the joy and the happiness of heaven. And when we remind ourselves of that, we more passionately love God. And we also become people who want to invite others to that. So we pray today for the strength to be people who recognize who God really is, what it is that our Catholic faith opens up for us. And we also pray for the strength to have the courage to invite other people to the joy and peace of our Catholic faith as well.